What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Modern Craftsman podcast. Why am I knocking on my desk as I'm doing an introduction to this podcast?
It's like official. It's
Official?
professional. Yeah.
There we go.
It's like a news. Man, maybe no. You need a pen.
Pen? Oh, I don't even have I don't
Yeah,
even
with like
own
a
a
paper. With like a
clicky pen.
paper. Pens are going by the wayside. You're not gonna need them pretty soon anymore.
Yeah, you get the digital app.
You heard it here first. Yeah.
Get rid of your pens. You don't need them.
Yep.
We got a second time around. First time for you guys. Luke from the Williams Group down in Australia. Pretty epic builder. You got to check out his website. We talk about his website the whole podcast. And I know if you're listening to this when you're working or driving, you're going to be cursing our name. But head over to his website. See these projects that we're talking about. Australia just has it going on in so many different levels. And of course, architecture, I'm not shy about my love for it. But we also get into, even what it means to be a builder and how to become a builder down there.
Yeah, I would suggest if you're listening to this podcast now, just whatever you're doing, stop, take 5 minutes, pull over, pull up their website, just go to the projects tab and look at, what they don't have that many projects up there that you could look through all those projects real quickly so you have an idea as to what we're talking about, and it'll give you point of reference.
Tyler, you are going to get someone fired. They're going to be 5 minutes late. They're going to have a brand new iced coffee.
Nah,
and they're going to be like, sorry, I had to pull. Tyler told me to pull over.
Yeah, nah, just do it. You'll be good. Just tell them that I told you to, and then go leave us a review.
A 5-star.
Have your boss leave us a review too.
That's a 1-star.
Yeah, but at least you have a point of reference, and then after the podcast, it's impressive. It's really it looks fake.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's really wild. So, yeah, big thanks to Luke for jumping on again. The reason I said second time around, first time we recorded with him, something happened to the audio, so we lost it. And he was so gracious enough to wake up early down in Australia for us to record again before he headed out to the job site. Yeah, let's get into it. Before we do, this podcast is brought to you by Duration Millwork. And despite TrueX being on allocation, Duration has not had any availability issues thanks to a very deep inventory levels prior to the announcement of allocation, which the allocation was by Westlake Royal Building Products, previously Royal Building Products, and they have not changed their lead times. All stock profiles are on the ground and ready to ship. Semi-custom profiles are 3 to 6 working days for production, and custom profiles are 2 weeks for production from an approved shop drawing, which is sick because we're doing a project that they're speccing custom true exterior brackets and trim and curved crown molding and et cetera, and our framer was like, yeah, but you know how long that's going to take to get on site? I said 2 weeks.
Not that long.
Yeah. He's like, what do you mean 2 weeks?
Long.
I'm like, listen, I do the read for Duration.
I gotta connect.
I know it's 2 weeks. I say it all the time. 2 weeks.
Dude, Keith is Tyler's stepdad.
Yeah. We find that out later in the podcast.
Oh, man. Maybe a little too much coffee while on the podcast. I'm getting a second wind.
Dude, you know what I bought? Wandering Bear cold brew.
What's that?
It's like it's cold brew in a box from Amazon. I've been trying to find, like, I used to buy the subscription to Starbucks Nitro cans, but I just feel like the flavor is just not there. So I started buying.
Yeah.
This is not an ad, by the way. This is not #ad sponsored.
But if you want to sponsor us,
Wandering Bear, that'd be great. I would so fill my fridge with big boxes of cold brew. But yes, I am all hyped up on caffeine. Well, Luke, as I said, first off, thank you so much for doing this again. For those that you guys are listening, Luke actually was on this a couple months ago. We had an amazing conversation, talked about all things Australia, and lost the audio. Well, not even lost the audio. I don't think we ever got it.
I don't think it made its way from Australia.
Yeah, we could blame that.
It's
like stuck at the border somewhere.
Yeah,
it's too far.
The border's been closed for a while.
Either way, yeah. What's going on down there?
We're apparently now open for imports, not exports yet. So you can leave. It's just limited, I think. So
you can or cannot.
You can leave. Yeah, you can, but it's just not an open slather. It's limited, and I think about another month, I think, and it'll be, incoming and exporting will be fine.
And so all of that sounds fine. When can I visit? That's what I want to
You
know.
should be able to visit now. You should be able to come here now.
Oh,
Yeah, imports is no
all
worries.
right.
You just can't leave.
Yeah, you just
Oh, but I can't leave?
no, you could probably leave if you're a tourist. That's probably not a problem. But leaving from here,
Okay.
it's just limited. Yeah, but people are doing it. A lot of people went over for the Super Bowl. So
Quick introduction, who you are, where you're located, where in Australia are you? And then let's get into some of the projects that you've built.
yeah, so we're from Williams Group down in far south Victoria, which on the Mornington Peninsula, which is about an hour and a half south of Melbourne. So we pretty much get all of Bass Straits weather. So we get some pretty fierce weather, but we also get some pretty nice seasons at the same time. So it's a good, not a lot of humidity like most of northern Australia, but constant nice weather, but a bit of wind as well.
You're on the coast, right? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
on the coast, yeah. So pretty much we look out, if you could see it, towards Tasmania.
And you were a custom home builder forever and recently changed, is that right?
Yeah. So my father started it about 38 years ago as a custom home builder up until about maybe 2 years ago, and then we've gone more into the developing. But in the last year, it's sort of changed again because the property market's increased by so much. It's sort of killing the developing market. So it's a bit of a catch-22.
Meaning it's too much of an investment to buy the property.
Yeah, like the price of land in most of the sort of luxury suburbs on the east coast of Australia have probably nearly doubled in 2 years. I was reading a stat yesterday that I think a couple of suburbs have gone up 206% in 30 months.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, so the price of land, price of land is like a luxury
And what's driving that?
demand, people getting out of the cities.
I think we got a delay with Luke. We'll roll with it and we'll figure it out. The luxury suburbs, like you know, on our last episode, we talked about where, I think one of the houses, the Hourihan house is, I think for me, I've been following you guys for a long time. It's a pretty iconic home. There's a story behind that home, if I remember right. But that ended up being built in a suburb that wasn't overly developed, and now it's become this, market where people are moving and building these luxury homes. Do I have that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. So that's where I was brought up, Flinders, which is a real country town. So it was, my father moved there because it was pretty much a surfing town and it was cheap. About in the 80s, 1 year's carpentry salary could pay for a block of land. So that was about $16,000. And the median price there now is $2.5 million. So it's just
So
Damn, you guys should have bought up a bunch of land then.
that's what every builder has been saying for the last year, that they should have owned half the suburb, but unfortunately can't afford that. But no, so it's also landlocked, so it's probably one of the only sort of half luxury suburbs in Melbourne where it's got 100-acre farms around it for probably 15-20 minute drive each side of it, and they've got a certain zoning where you can't subdivide it. So it's sort of landlocked in the fact that you've got no suburbs to push out into to, decrease the value of one because you just move into the suburb on the next street. So it's very special place. So, and that's where Hourihan we built on the cliff there, the big house.
And that's the one that you guys built that the people ended up not moving into and selling when it was done?
Yeah, the client did. Yeah. So we built it for them. It was probably about a 4.5 year process. 2 years of building, but 2.5 years of planning and development, engineering, a lot of engineering because it was on about 1.6 kilometers of concrete piles because it's on a bluestone cliff.
It's, I know a lot of you guys are listening when you're driving, but if you have a chance, williams-group.com.au, and it's the Hourihan house. And of course you can see it on Instagram.
It's pretty sick.
It's epic. And, and that was one of the, maybe it was, I don't know if it was the first project I saw that you guys completed, but I remember following it really closely. And, to hear that it was a 4.5 year project, to think about what 4.5 years is in a home like that, and then to build it in 2 years, I mean, even that's a feat based on, at least from what I can see. It seems enormously complicated that I could see that thing taking 4.5 years just to build it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
at what point did
Yeah, it's about 200 house squares, just to put people's idea of size. So it's very big.
And what does 200 house squares equate to?
It's
we
about
gotta look this up.
1,860 square meters.
1,700. What did you
So
say?
times 3.3, so like 7,000 square feet, probably.
How
18.
many
Well,
how
well,
many
So
square
it's like
meters?
1,850 square meters.
1,850 square meters. Yeah, a house square in Australia is 9 foot by 9 foot.
Wait, hold on,
So 6,100 square
hold
feet.
on. 1,850 square meters?
Oh, times
That's
9.
that's 20,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's no
That's half
6,000
a
square foot house.
it's a half an acre of house.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's insane. So going back to what you said a couple minutes ago, you got into develop. So you were building that as a custom, and then
yeah,
they decided to sell it. At that point, you're like, there was no involvement as an investor or developer at that point, right? You were strictly
no,
hired on a fee structure to build this house, and they decided to sell it. You got paid, and the project just went away. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. Just like any custom home, we built the house next door as well, which we've only just finished probably 3 months ago, which hasn't not online yet. We haven't put any photos up, but it's completely different
Mhm.
style. It's more like a 70s sunken lounge room, all timber inside, curves.
Cool.
It's very, very cool. But that'll start going live in about another month or two, just as photos and media comes out.
And was that a development project?
No, that was a custom home for a client as well. So we had both at the same time. It's just one we started a year before the other one.
Sure. What was what? Where was the point that you decided to switch, or at least try to put more focus into developing from ground up? Because I think a lot of people in this industry, myself included, we talk about, getting into, like, we all of our projects are custom at this point, but we're making a very big effort to get into the development game because frankly, I take a lot of inspiration from Australia. I think you guys have some of the most iconic homes, especially when it comes to modern architecture, and I don't see that here. And I want to take the inspiration I get from you guys and bring it into this market. But I want to, and for me, I want to do it on a development basis, so I have the creative freedom to push those boundaries. So that's
Yeah.
why I was so interested in talking to you last time. Is like, I'm on your website, I look at all these projects. I'm not sure what percentage are development versus custom, but the fact that they're all boundary pushing is so interesting to me. And to think about, like, all right, I'm going to do that on a scale of on the scale of developing is, I want to kind of unload that. I understand now, for the last 2 years, everything has spiked or doubled in value, and it makes it harder to develop. And frankly, people are probably moving into those areas and demanding the product that you wanted to build on development anyway. But during the time that you were in development, what was the moment that you decided that was going to be your focus, and why?
Well, we built a couple of our own homes, my brother and I, two brothers and I designed them and built them, just so they were going to be our homes. And when we got into that, with the sort of freedom where you got to sort of decide the easier way to build something without it being cheap, the fact that a window can be X size, so let's make it X size, instead of an architect just drawing it on a piece of paper and saying that's what I want, and then having to re-engineer everything
Hmm.
around that window. It was the flexibility of saying, okay, we know where the load point's coming down. So if we make a window this big here, and then put a doorway here and have a little bit of a wall there, it's just that freedom to be able to just not just save money, but also just make things easier, and you still get the same look at the end of the day, instead of just looking at a piece of paper and saying, that's what we're building, that's it. It's got to be this millimeter perfect, and the costs that go into that, instead of thinking, oh, if we made the ceiling area like 150 mil taller, we could use timber trusses instead of LVLs or anything like that. So that's where we started creating this freedom of designing it ourselves, and we sort of started going that way. And then we realized, well, we could actually do this as a profession, not just for our own house.
That's interesting. I oftentimes think for somebody to be a really good designer that they should have experience in what they're designing, and even something, if you want to kind of scale it down to kitchen design, where it's like, how are you going to be a really good kitchen designer if you have never installed kitchens? And that's, I'm not knocking anyone by saying that, but I think that part of a kitchen installation, a kitchen design, is making a seamless design and understanding how that everything's going to come together and how it plays with each other. And when most designers are designing a house and they don't understand the impact of, one massive span of glass with nowhere to post down, and how that affects, everything in the construction, it's almost counterintuitive and counterproductive. You're creating this golden egg that's going to cost so much money and so much engineering to build, and potentially the aesthetic difference there may be meant, like, it might just become diminishing returns, where like, this is costing so much, at what point are you willing to say no, let's not go this route?
Yeah, exactly. And just saving, and then we started trying to do at a time, we'll design it and develop it to try and save money for the clients. But it's just the designing aspect is a completely different game. We found out that, people are really particular. They want it to be, a certain look, and they don't want that flexibility. But when you do it as a development, they walk into it and they get what they're given. You don't get to decide 150 different decisions on a kitchen or windows or helmets. You just, and you don't care when you bought it. You own it. That's it.
The thing that I see, for me, in thinking about bringing, for what would be like my market, a new product that's pushing the boundary of what I think you guys build, and these really modern homes, doing it on spec or development, I constantly, it's like, oh, that's too risky. It's too risky. It's too risky. You're narrowing your market, and I firmly believe that, yeah, my market is going to be narrow, but there's a lot of people that would pay and want this product. It just doesn't exist. And, that's why I'm so interested in doing it, where it's like, I know I can't be the only one, where it's like, if I walk down the street and I saw a house like that and I could afford it, I would buy it, because like, that's not a home that you're seeing on a consistent basis, where just everything is so very traditional around here. And oftentimes the modern stuff is done poorly, and it's not, and but it directly relates to what you just said, is like the thought process behind design. And, it is interesting. I think about the projects that we're working on now, where, there are things in these projects that we're looking at like, man, that's so expensive to do that detail. And if we had been involved, like, I mean, like, literally at the drafting table as they were drawing something, and said, hey, wait a second, if you just move that a little bit, it would be significantly cheaper or less expensive. But by the time it makes it to us, like you said, like the architect draws something specific, or the load path is in a weird spot because they want this clear piece of glass, where it's like, what if we did an inboard column in the middle of that? Now you're not interrupting the glass, but you have this inboard column you can get, and it would, you've reduced your steel cost by 50. Like, there's all these considerations, and you're talking about it on the development side, where every one of those decisions you're getting to make early on and attribute a dollar value to it.
And a time value too, which I find when you get involved before the design stage can really save months of time. For example, that large Flinders project I did, the first drafting model had, it was a big suspended floor slab. Below it, there was steel, brick, and block to get to that stage. And I said, why are we doing 3 different contractors? I said, why don't we just block the entire ground floor and then sit a slab on top of it? And then from there, everything can be steel above. So for that, while we were working on the blocks, the steel above was all getting built in a factory 100 kilometers away. And then as soon as the slab was down, the next day it literally rolled in. So within 2 weeks, there was a slab down and then a steel portal frame completely finished. And I think that's really important when you start doing your own design, is to make sure that you simplify the trades so that you only have one trade as much as you can, instead of, trying to put a concrete slab on a bit of brick, a steel column, and a bit of block work.
Right, because I mean, even for the subs, it's, it's frustrating for them to go for a small portion, where it's like, they'd rather mobilize one time, be there for a long time, and have it not be a small job.
Yeah, exactly. Or come back, back and forth.
You're also opening the door to kind of pass that buck of responsibility to somebody else when now you have, instead of one trade saying, hey, we need this to be flat for our steel or for our slab to come in. Now you're involving multiple trades that could always be like, well, this is the way the steel was when I showed up, or
Mm.
the bricklayer did this, where it's now like, no, you're accountable for this to be where it needs to be for us to get our slab in, and there's no pointing fingers. And I feel like you just end up getting a better overall product if one person's accountable and responsible for getting from point A to point B.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like so much of the design process is really tough as well, because you have these designers, architect, engineers who are selling customers on a product without really getting that much input on that from, the building and the technical side. And it's so hard to kind of circle back on that, because everything feels like a compromise at that point to that customer, or like, we really wanted it this way, this is how we envisioned it, where, had you given them an option beforehand where it's like, you can go with route A or route B. Here's the cost of route A, and the cost of route B is 2 times that. Is it worth it for you to have that? And if you approach that situation with that, you'll probably get a different answer than, kind of coming them with option B and then trying to say, well, option A is going to be easier and it might save you a little bit of money. I just feel like it should be the other way around.
I think also not getting a builder involved early. You need them involved early, even if you're not going to use them at the end. Still set it out to tender, but get them, pay them by the hour, whatever the deal is you could do to get them involved at the start, so they can save you in time and money. Because architects have never usually built a house. They're usually always only drawn it, so they don't know exactly how everything works. They've got an idea, and they also do not know budgets very well.
I love the fact that there's probably an architect listening being like, screw you, man. I've built 4 houses and I know what it costs. But this is definitely an argument for,
Yeah, they're probably the ones that do
yeah.
that.
But this is this is a straight argument for the design build process. And, whether it's a design build firm, which, they're sitting here saying, Luke, preach, man, like this is why we decided to bring design, we're a design build firm. But if you're not a design build firm, this is also an argument for the pre-construction process that we've talked about. And like you said, getting the builder involved early. It's, I had a architect reach out to me just a couple weeks ago and asked me to get together a quick price for a project. I'm like, listen, we don't typically bid work, but I'll look at it. Like, I'm interested in working with you. And then I got an email just the other day saying, hey, hold off. We heard back from a couple of builders, and the numbers came back way higher than, what they were expecting. And they were pretty far along with design.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
like why do we keep going through this same process? And it's not just with one art, it's constantly with architects. We sit down, we spend time. Like, for us, we're not spending a tremendous amount of time putting pricing together. We try to get involved on pre-construction to help, quote unquote, the design build process. But there's times where we're going to spend, a day going through something and putting together a price. And whether you're reviewing that proposal live or they're getting it through email, they're opening it, they're going right to the bottom line, and they're making a decision right there within 3 seconds as to, I'm going to respond or I'm hitting the brakes. And it's usually, I'm hitting the brakes because this came back way higher. And it's like, but what? So what is the value? This, you know, uh, speaking to the architects out there, like, what is that value of putting together this design and spending a lot of your time, designing something that ultimately they can't afford to build? Where it's like, the argument has come up on the podcast before, is that, well, they get paid for their design time. So they get, if they're drawing it again, they're getting paid again as the architect. But beyond that, like, even just for the project itself, it's like, I've sat down with an architect where we priced something, we were $2 million over what he wanted to spend. And I'm like, all right, that's a substantial amount over. And the architect's like, yeah, it's just like, now we're gonna have the VE and it's just not gonna be cool anymore. And I was like, well, it could have been cool if we all were involved early on and we guided the project right. Now, instead, you're taking a $4 million project and trying to get it down to 2 million, and you're gonna do that by removing things from the current design rather than just trying to design a $2 million home.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And it happens very often.
At what point in your process, Luke, are you guys establishing some sort of budget? Because I guess where I'm coming with this is I think that we need to be able in our pre-construction process to be able to establish a fairly accurate budget based on our experience, even without a comprehensive design. Like I think that so many people are signing up for these design agreements and everything else where it's like, well, I don't know how much this job's going to cost, so let's sign up for this. We'll get in bed with these people and the job will eventually be ours. They'll spend what they want to spend. But I do think that we should be able to kind of quickly ballpark a job based on our experience and say, hey, I think this is going to be between this number and this number. Let's move ahead with the design and have the experience to actually come close to those numbers. Like, at what point in your process are you guys establishing some sort of base point pricing for these projects?
Well, a couple of years ago, that was a lot easier than it is now for two main reasons. One is we've had this strange thing in Australia where you've got architects and now you've got interior designers. And it used to be the one-stop shop. You go to the architect, they design the entire home from outside to inside. You know, you might get an interior decorator to help with soft furnishings, furnitures, maybe a color selection, possibly. But now we've got this new like sort of sub-trade area where there's interior designers, and they design everything on the inside. So they do the floor finishes, the ceilings, the plasters, tiles, appliances, kitchen design. Sometimes they even want to move windows. Sometimes they'll want to close windows. Sometimes they'll want to move walls. Sometimes they'll want to move plumbing. And that's really starting to come into its own in the last couple of years. So now you've got two trades separated, usually in different firms, trying to get the one result. And for budgeting, it's very hard because you go into a job with, an X price that you've done for a house for an architect before, and you say, it might be X amount per square meter. And then all of a sudden you get this interior designer come in and change everything to, Calcutta marble, or, the detail might be routing out all the marble really thin. So we usually circle back to your question. We go by like a square meter rate at the start when we might get like a preliminary tender set, or not a tender set, a preliminary set, where you say, this is what we've done in the past: concrete floor, steel roof, X amount of glass. We'll give you this meter rate. This is for this house. But, depending on what you put on the inside, can really significantly change, what that cost will be. And usually they're not selecting those interior designers until you get to, nearly a construction set of drawings.
And that makes sense. Do you think that, that being said, that these designers are bringing enough, like, is the product that much better with these designers for you to showcase your work, or is this just somewhat of a headache for you with all of the changes?
No, when you employ an interior designer, it is in a different league altogether to an architect, or to nearly anywhere I see around the world. Like I watch a few of the American, real estate reality shows that you have out of Hollywood, and, they're selling 30, 40, $60 million homes. But I look at the interior design of those and think that, there's houses in Australia that are worth 3 or 4 million, and the interior design by an interior designer is just so much more elegant and soft and warm, even in big spaces.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Compared to when I look through
this is
those,
what I'm saying about
even that one that's
Good,
just come on,
yeah.
the one in Hollywood. Have you seen that for sale? I've seen a bit of it from over here, but I look at it.
Yeah,
and
it's
go,
like 110 million or 145 million or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's the most expensive home ever marketed. But and it's not finished too. You got to finish it. But I look at it and I go,
Right.
no, it's a beautiful home. There's no doubt about it. But I just look at the finishings, and you got these big areas of void. You got these big bits of glass, and it does look when you walk in like luxury. But when you actually go to live in the home, I look at it going, well, that's not practical. That's not warm. That would echo. There's no real detail on the little things that matter. It's still beautiful, but I sit there going, gee, if you could just get like a MIM design, or a there's a few in Melbourne that will do the design that we do at the moment, and put that there, the home would just feel so much nicer than these big, bold open spaces that I keep seeing. Yeah.
It's This
in these luxury American homes.
I know, and there's you've probably seen him. I think his name is like Nick Ennis or something like that.
Schiffer.
No, not Schiffer. That's me for who doesn't know. No, I'm just kidding. The Nick Ennis, I think, is his name on YouTube, and he does these like tours of these luxury homes. He goes into the craziest homes. One of them being this home that you're just talking about. But it's the same thing. I watch those. I'm like, yeah, the house looks amazing. It's like architecturally very cool when you see it from the outside. But then they walk through the inside. I'm like, it's so lackluster.
Yeah,
It's just the material. It's exactly what you said. There's just large spaces, voids of spaces, and it's just you know, it's completely lackluster. And sure, yeah, you could buy that home for $100 million and then decorate it and do your own thing. But it's like at that level, like why isn't that being considered? And it's not even that it's not being considered. It's being considered and it's not being pulled off.
yeah,
In my opinion.
yeah. I still think they're spending
You
the
know
money, but they're not
right,
getting the detail right and the warmth and the soul of the house. It's just what's the most expensive material? Oh, let's use Calcutta marble. Let's put that everywhere. Let's just
right,
lick the walls in it.
right.
And it's like, well, sometimes put a bit of that there is nice, and
And they
then put
use it everywhere and just, like, in the plainest form, it's all slab, where it's like, I look at the stuff that you guys do, it's like, yeah, you're using Calcutta marble, but you're creating a fluted pattern around the entire island, or you're cutting it in a weird way, or it's like, there's way more thought that went into it rather than just, "Let's select Calcutta." It's like,
yeah,
"Okay,
yeah.
now what do you want me to do with it?" "What do you mean?
But
It comes in a flat slab, just put it on top of the cabinetry."
but also that's where you have to make the decision though. You can't put the Calcutta everywhere if you're going to do that detail. So you make feature areas of the Calcutta, and you do the deep
Mhm,
rebate, and then you just have a plaster wall behind. That's just plaster because you've saved the
mhm.
money and not putting Calcutta all there, but you've given this real art piece of Calcutta, where it matters.
Luke, can you share what your typical square meter cost is for, like, your projects?
Big
What you're
question.
building them at?
So it used to be. If we went back 8 or 10 years, it was the average price was about 2,500 a square meter, for a
Okay.
normal home, not a Horizon home, but and then it jumped to about 3,500, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and then now for a home of that sort of quality, it would be around about 10,000 a square. No, not 10, maybe 8,000 a square meter.
8,000 a square meter.
Yeah,
So 8,000 times point
I know
zero
what math.
0.09, we'll call it, is 720, yeah, $720 a square foot, which, I mean, I would say that's right in line with what if anything, it's probably less expensive
Well,
than, in comparison to what some of this.
saying that
Go ahead.
that I finished that house literally not pre-COVID, but halfway through COVID. Now
Yeah.
we've got a few developments that we're looking at what we own now, and I'm getting the pricing back with what we've just had as changes in our supply industry, and it's probably gone up another 30 to 40%. For example, Loose Rio was about
Oh, no, I was just gonna say
yeah,
that, it's even at 720 a square foot, I mean, listen, that's expensive, especially across the entire US. People are building homes for $100 a square foot. Around here, you hear of builders building stuff for $200 to $300 a square foot. For us, we're north of 500, typically north of 600, and some of the more elaborate projects that we've done have been upwards of nine or $1,000 a square foot. Which if you're at 8,000 a square meter, works out to 720 a square foot. I mean, that's you're building extremely luxurious product, and there's a lot of work. Like there's a tremendous amount of thought that goes into that. I'm not sure where you're standing now, but even like the room you're in right now, like it's well dressed. It looks like it's well thought out,
yeah. This is
and
our
it
house,
just
so
it's I see
we had an interior designer. I'll just go
you did.
give us a hand. Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be like a consistency, and amongst. I mean, Tyler and I talk about it constantly. Even architects that we work with, or I work with, constantly. It's like we constantly look at Australia and it's like, I don't know what it is down there, but they just seem to have it figured out. And there's a lot more consideration going into it. And it's probably Tyler, it's probably like, we probably could argue that it's just the personality and like what we value as a society here of like bigger homes, bigger space, bigger this, bigger that, where it's like, that's not what it should be about. It should be about more thoughtful living.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm sure it has to do with the real estate market, and I don't know how that is in Australia. And I mean, around here, I think that so much of everything and people's appraisals and what they're getting loans for when they go to, borrow against the equity on their home, all of that is just coming off of square footage and how many bathrooms you have. So I think that people like that's what people want here. They want big. They want to tell people that they have, an 8,000 to 10,000 square foot house, and it doesn't have to be nice. Like it doesn't have to have details as long as it's big and it's a monster, and it doesn't matter what it costs to heat or if it's efficient or what the details are look like. Like I don't know. I think that so many people, especially in my area, they like that's the benchmark for them, that they've made it, that they're successful, that they can show people this big home, even if it's the ugliest, gaudiest house that you've ever seen. Like they think that that's luxury.
Yeah, I agree. Well, don't you guys have everything bigger though? Your oranges are about this big.
I think that's I think that's Texas.
God, do you have little
But
have
like
little oranges?
Oh, I just think I go to a
Is that a
supermarket there,
those are
and
grapefruits.
everything's bigger. It's just like a piece of pizzas, like this big. Like
They only
But I mean,
have
even
barroom pizza down in Australia.
yeah, like
it just I think that it ends up being it's the market, and it's what people are putting out, and it's what people see. And I think that, in Luke's case, people see the work that they put out, and I'm sure that every house isn't like that in Australia. I think that he probably surrounds himself with those people in those markets, and maybe there is a higher percentage of people who follow that. And I just think that maybe it's less here, Nick. I think that people probably value it less, and even when somebody's getting a custom home built, it's almost as if nobody knows the meaning of a custom home. Where it's like, just because you bought a lot and you hired a builder and it's going up from scratch and it's not like a one-off design, is it really custom? It's all the same subs that you use for every other build. So I think it's just kind of what people accept. But I was even looking, what's his name, Brandon Ingram posted a house a couple of days ago, 2 days ago, and he posted this tiny little house that he designed, and it's 6 years old, and it's small. And in his comment, he says that like the house doesn't look a day under 95. And for me, I see a house like that that's like, it doesn't have anything extra. It's so well designed. Every detail's thought out. It's a small house. And for me, that screams like luxury. Not, I would take that any day of the week over a 10,000 foot house with like vinyl siding, veneer foundation, paver driveway, where it's just like, I think that people's perception of what custom is and what luxury and high end is, it's so skewed. Probably because of TV, probably because people just don't know and builders aren't helping their own cause.
yeah, and it's probably also the designers too, though. Like I feel like there's a big difference between interior design in Australia and architecture compared to America. From what I've just seen, maybe it's because of the lot sizes too. Here blocks are smaller. Maybe in the suburbs, so you do get a small area to work with. Like even in Toorak, where you might have like that's the most expensive suburb in Victoria, and it's got big blocks. But you go next door to the next suburb, and they're a fifth of the size, and it's still a luxury suburb. So people are fitting more in. They've got the budget to spend it, but their block might only be 600 square meters. Where next door is 4,000 square meters. So people are going, oh, well, let's spend the same amount of money, or not same, but a lot of money, because it's an expensive area in a smaller space. So we capitalize on the square meterage of what we've got, and put new modern designs in there. But what I was also going to say, which you were just saying before, Tyler, was you're right. There's only probably 5% of the market is luxury homes. 95% of the building market is like project homes, which is one builder might build 3,000 houses and you choose an A, B, C, D, E, F home. You might change a door or something, but apart from that, there's 56,000 houses I think being built in Victoria or Australia, and I would say 52,000 are project homes. And you don't see that. You don't get the luxury. You don't get the the detail that we're doing. It's just a B, C, D, E, F, G house because it's a house. It's practical, not luxury.
And obviously, like, being in the US, we're, or at least for me, like, I'm staring at all the luxury things, the stuff that inspires me, and I'm not even aware of the fact that 52,000 homes are project homes, but it makes sense. Like, we're talking to someone that's a custom home builder, someone that's building at a high caliber, and frankly, you probably deal with the same stuff that we're dealing with over here from a quality, an issue behind quality, with some of the project type homes that the majority of what is being built isn't thoughtfully designed and thoughtfully built, and there's probably tremendous issues. And we're obviously speaking to someone that has a much narrower market over there.
Yeah, a very, very narrow market. As it's the old golden pyramid, a bit like in development, where the higher end you go, the less people that you've got. The less people you're going to pick out to actually have the money to buy that home.
How much of an impact did that make on your decision into getting in development? Like, did you ever worry that you were going to make your potential buyer, like that buyer market was going to be too narrow?
Yes, but at the same time, as long as you don't go too particular in your design, you'll have enough people that'll want the product in the right area. So you don't go put a really a benchtop that you might like out of some bizarre marble with some veins through it. You just can't select that. So you just got to be careful in what you choose so that the majority will like it.
And what were you like? What was the quote unquote market research you were doing when you were considering what you were building and where you were building it?
It was probably more through going to other open homes, finding out what is selling. What we're building for client builders, for client jobs. That's what we're selling to pretty much the same demographic of person. What architects are doing what in the certain areas. Talking to the real estate agents to find out what's selling and what's not selling. We're in a coastal town here, but people still want modern. So it's that careful, mixture of not being too modern that you feel like you're in, the city suburbs, but being coastal enough with colours that are warm that people feel like they're at a beach house, but it is modern. And also not going too far and spending too much money on things that people don't care too much about.
I mean, rattle off a list of that. Like, what were the things that you tried to stay away from that people just genuinely didn't care about?
It's not that they don't care, but they don't want to pay if they're buying it. Like most people down here,
Sure.
it's their holiday home. So most people aren't going to go put like rammed earth, concrete walls, concrete roofs, those sort of things in because it is an extreme cost. They're happy with for a coastal home to have a beautiful look on the outside, but just plaster walls on the inside. Not doing like the Venetian finished plaster, polished plastered sort of things because value for money, it might be an extra $75,000 to do it on a job, but people don't really want to pay $75,000 for their beach home, and it's not practical, for kids, for everything else that you do here. And probably also just keeping things, not trying to push the engineering boundaries too far, still making it look nice, but, not having, like I was saying, if you look at that Horizon project, not doing things like that would be the opposite to that would be what most people would be happy with, even in a nice custom home.
Wait, yeah, and I think that there's so many, like with what you do, Nick, and obviously what you do, Luke. I think that there's so many details that are so heavily design driven that if you really quantified what that detail cost to implement versus something that's comparable and kind of gets the look that you're going for, that detail that you're looking for, that 6% of people who want that is fine, but for 20% of people the other detail is going to be good enough. And when it's an investment property, you know, that you don't necessarily have a buyer for at that point, it's almost like I said before, the point of no return, where you know you get it to 95% and it's good enough. To get from that 95 to 98 or 98 to 100 almost takes the same amount of effort as getting from, you know, 50 to 95. And it's like, all right, if nobody's wanting this detail and specifically paying for this detail, we could probably get it close for a lot less.
Yeah, exactly. My father actually explained it to me about 10 years ago, and he'd never done development, but he'd sold his own house, and he'd built a mud brick home, which was practical for him, acoustic, fantastic for energy efficiency. But when he went to sell it, the real estate agent said the problem with the mud brick home is you've got 100 people coming down the freeway to buy a house in Flinders. 90 of them do not want a mud brick home. So he said automatically you've got rid of 90% of your market just through one decision. They're not even coming to look at your house. They might actually come there and fall in love with it, but if they see it's mud brick, he said 90% won't even come to your house to have a look. And I really stuck with that to realize, you know, we want everyone to come and have a look. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but at least you want them in the door. You want them to see it. You want them to feel it. You want them to, you know, because a photo sometimes doesn't do justice for a home, or neither does, you know, rammed earth or mud brick. They might get there and actually fall in love with the house, and the mud brick doesn't matter. But if you see it from a photo when you're doing development, people go, oh, I don't like that.
They're ruling it out. Going back to, I'm going to keep harping on the Horizon house. Like, when they sold it, was it hard to sell?
It was, well, anything between $20 and $30 million is pretty hard to sell, because not everyone's got that much money to spend on a beach house that's half.
You got to sell it to like 5 people.
Yeah. So look, it was with the agent sold. I had really nothing to do with that, apart from I just got called in to you know, assist with questions, because it is such a big home that people wanted to know the ins and out and how it works and how energy efficient it was and everything else that goes in with it. But you know, they probably had, but at the same time, it sold within, I wouldn't know, probably 3 months, because it's such a statement, and nothing's really been built like that on the peninsula that anyone's ever sold, because it's so much, you know, it's 4.5 years of time. You're pushing the boundaries of engineering. You know, the engineers didn't even know at the start how they make the cantilever work. You know, there's just no one would really go to that much effort to sell it, you know, because it is a lot of work and a lot of time, a lot of effort. But no, they got a buy, and then, you know, they walked in and loved it, and they've been there nearly every weekend enjoying the home. So that's what we love to see. You know, grandkids running around on the lawn. You know, that's great to see compared to just seeing they're empty.
I want to be one of those grandkids.
Yeah, right.
My grandkids or my grandparents like 55 and older in Voorhees, New Jersey. That house is so cool, but like you had said, it's kind of landlocked. The amount of open space around that house, but there's some views where you look off kind of into the distance and you don't see anything but just like rolling hills and trees.
Yeah, exactly. It faces, and that was what I was explaining before. It's on the boundary of that sort of rural to suburban boundary, which is actually a creek. So on the other side, they're all 70 to 100 acre farms. So he's probably only looking behind him. He's got, you know, suburban, a township, but the other side is just literally 70 to 100 acre farms. So he's only looking at 2 houses, and most of the view is looking at Bass Strait, where you see these massive fronts roll in. And yeah, everyone goes on a nice day and says, oh, you know, how lovely is this? But we actually loved, once it was locked up though, that on the bad days where you just see these massive storms rolling through, and you'd literally just know in 3 minutes, you know, it's going to be, you know, disgusting weather. But it was lovely on the inside, just watching them roll in.
When you're building a product, you know, obviously not this home, you said it's a very narrow market, $20-30 million, of course. But when you're building something, you know, if you're pushing the boundary and building more modern homes and something that is more luxurious, beyond the considerations of things that, you know, that you're creating alternates for, rather, whether it's Venetian plaster versus painted walls and gyp, what other things are you putting into place to make sure that you're making your home more marketable? And I guess where I'm going with this is, I look at, I want to leverage like social media and telling the story behind the home, where I look at the Hourihan home. And if I was considering buying it and I had that kind of money, for me personally, and not a lot of people would care, but like I would want to understand how it was built. Like I would want to see the story and like the construction process. And I know you guys have Grand Designs down there, and the local project I think has featured you guys, but like there's publications where they capture like the story of these homes that I think, at least in my eyes, they help, you know, bring that potential buyer to a property like this, where it's like where there's a story or a video or something along behind the scenes to kind of navigate you towards ultimately purchasing a property. Are you leveraging any of that in some of your development?
You've just got to be careful, because some people love it and some people hate it. So some people don't want anyone to know. They want to be really private. And we've got houses that we can't put on online, or we can't put on social media, because they're very private people. And we're talking about, that top echelon of, billionaires literally, and they don't want, their house splurged everywhere. So I think you've just got to be careful and figure out where in the market you are. Most people between say $1 and $5 million, they're not going to be that private. They're sort of more probably community people, and people are going to be there anyway. And I think that's when you can, push the social media until a point where it becomes personal, where the kitchen starts getting finished and the furniture starts going in. That's where you've got to really back it off again, just to make sure that, they're comfortable, it's their home, but during the build process, it is really good. But I don't think though that, to be honest, that the purchaser is really looking at that. I think they're looking more at finished product. What am I getting for X amount of money? Where am I located? Is it a flat block? Are my kids going to be able to run around? Are my grandkids going to be run around? It's great for our business, pushing that side of it. But I think, and for everyone watching and all the trades, everyone's learning things about it. If they're going to go to do their own home, or they're going to, take something from our, social media to put it in their own home because they like it, fantastic. But I think for the buyer, they're probably not sitting there watching it, unless it's a custom home where they're just interested in watching the progress.
So in that sense, you're putting more of a focus to, I'm assuming, realtor and broker relationships.
Yeah, and probably the market too, to suit the house in the perfect area. We just take an example. I saw a house sell about 2 days ago, brand new house, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, but it was the wrong style for the area, and it only got around $3 million, which a block of land in that area is probably worth about 2.2 to 2.6. So I've watched that go and go. It's just, they've just picked the wrong product for the complete wrong area. With Sorrento's a very coastal luxury town, and it's the wrong product, and you could tell from the straight from the start that it just wasn't going to mix with the area.
I'm on your website. I feel like every time. Well, I guess we've only had you on twice now, but I'm looking through all of your stuff. The Shore, is it Shoreham or Shoreham?
Yeah, Shoreham.
I don't know how you guys say it.
Shoreham.
Home, is that the Shoreham? Is that the one that you said your dad built and then you put an addition on however many years later?
Yeah, so he originally built it for a South African. I wasn't even building then. I think it was about 22 years ago. Which was it was a big house back in the day. Then it was it's on the beach there. It's got 2 acres on the beach in Shoreham, and it was about, I'd say it was probably about 60 house squares. So it's about 700 square meters roughly. Probably a bit smaller, probably 550 square meters. But it was really particular in the design, and you can see, with all the little windows, there's different roofs going different ways. There's steps everywhere. And then they sold it, and the new owner came to us and said, I've got grandkids, the house isn't big enough, I want a separate wing for all the grandkids, and I want to redo, it's 22 years old, it was a bit dated, and not all of it, but probably 3/4 of it. And so then I went, so Neil had built it, then I went in 2016 it must have been, and nearly ripped all the cabinet, all the kitchens out, the dining rooms, and then added an entire addition, which you see on that website, the right. It looks like its own little pod linked with a little glass bridgeway, and redid the whole thing for the new client. So it was a interesting project.
Yeah, the one of my favorite parts about this, obviously the house is beautiful, but the like when somebody builds a new house, the one thing that always stands out to me is like the landscaping typically has not matured enough and filled out where it's like, yeah, you can tell even, that's the one thing that I was that architect Brandon Ingram had posted about that house looking like it was 96 years old. I'm like, except for the landscaping, you can tell that it's 6 years old. And seeing all of this mature landscaping grown in on this house is, I feel, not something that you typically see because you don't get good pictures of a brand new house with like fully mature shrubs and trees and plantings that are all filled in right after it's done.
Yeah, 100%. The real estate agent we use says the one thing you can't buy in real estate is time. And especially in these rural properties, you get a long driveway with tree lined driveway. You can't buy that. You can probably buy trees that are, call it 6 meters tall, and they're probably going to be $1,000 each. And you can still go spend $200,000 on them, but they're not 10 to 12 meters tall. And you just can't buy that. You can buy big shrubs, but you won't make them feel like they've all intertwined and been there for 10 to 20 years.
It's so true, and you just don't realize that until you run into that situation where it's like, we could spend a lot of money on landscaping, but it's just until it grows in, it just looks like it's all new landscaping.
Right.
And I think that's another thing that kind of blows my mind when you have a really good landscape designer that understands how things are going to age and kind of grow into each other, where it's like you're planning stuff and fully understanding where the bounds of those plants are and how they're going to kind of mesh with each other for 15, 20 years down the road to be like, yeah, this is a really nice, mature garden and landscape. And kind of understanding that going into it, which you can tell on this house. I mean, like this one shot, I don't know if it's the back where it looks like there's like a Dr. Seuss type looking tree that's growing like straight up out of the
Yes, the
center.
courtyard with
It's so
the
sick.
cactus with the really tall inside part going up.
Yeah, it looks like it's from like
Yeah, it
Whoville
does.
or whatever the heck, like whatever that. I feel like they just came out with one recently. It's so sick. That property's awesome.
It's funny, Tyler. I feel like only recently I realized, like what you just said, like I realized that landscape architects, they won't photograph their work for years. And it's because like what they're trying to design isn't for the immediate. The design is what it will eventually be. And until you realize that, like you just said, you'll never look at another home picture the same, where it's like that's a brand new house, or or the fact that like, oh, this is filled in. They waited to photograph this house for years and years. And it's for like,
And then usually the house looks like
right.
crap at that point. And it's like you got the best of both worlds here because your house looks brand new and the landscaping's like completely matured.
But I think that, like, with that being said, especially in the remodeling world or even new construction world, that's a really important consideration to make, with existing plantings and trees on site, where it's like, perfect example, our Rhode Island project, we have this really massive tree in the front, and it sounds like we're going to have to take it down. And, I think every day, like, could we have done a better job protecting it, or was it already too far gone? But we have another project where the client had hired arborists. They came out, they protected all these super mature trees. Some of them are the biggest of their kind in the area. And there's this whole zone that we can't even walk in the zone, because it's like, we are going to protect this tree. And it makes you appreciate that more and more. So when this house is done and they step back, there's not gonna be new trees. These trees are 150 years old, and the house will be designed around around them. And I think like it just goes back to like what we were saying earlier, Luke, is like the thoughtfulness in behind what you do.
Yeah. Well, actually, here we don't even get a choice in that. So when we go to planning, if there's any trees on the site, we have to have an arborist engaged, and we actually have to temporary fence off every tree that they want to keep. And we're not allowed to go we're only allowed to infringe on 10% of the root barrier zone and it's pretty big. It's
Mhm.
huge actually, and that does create real challenges in the planning down here, so. But it's great when you actually see the project at the end, and
Yeah.
you've got this fantastic, like, down here there's a lot of like tea tree and Muna trees are really protected down here, and it can take a long time to grow. And you see a house though they've had to work with it, but then you see the finished product, and you've got this beautiful Muna tree that might be 30 years old winding through the back garden or something, and you go, well, you can't get that. The house would be 30 years old, like the shack next door, to get that feeling if we
Right.
didn't protect it.
Right. Yeah, it's funny when they put up the fence, I'm like, why is this area so big? And it was like, well, we go around the drip line of the tree. So if the branches are really wide, then the fence is going to be really wide. And I was like, so what's the rule? They're like, you can't even walk in there. I don't want you the guy, when you take lunch, everyone's going to want to open this fence up and sit underneath the tree on the hot day. Can't do it. And
What are they, like Ferdinand?
but it's like, it's just, you know, it's a pain in the butt because we have one tree that the fence is about 10 feet away from one of the corners of the house, and it's going to be a pain to excavate that corner and work in that corner. But it's like, you know what, that's the one area that it's going to be difficult, and like you just said, it's like it will be worth it in the end when we step back and that tree is standing and it's beautiful, and in comparison to like the unfortunate fact that we have to take one down that is mature in front of another home that we're building. And and at the end of the day, it's like the home will still be beautiful, but it would have been, it would or could have been, possibly could have been better if that tree had survived.
Yeah, I even drive around like where I live, and a lot of the houses are set back, and there's long driveways back, and so like houses are beside each other, and I'm like looking at how everyone screened their properties, and it's these old 60-year-old white pine trees that somebody probably planted a hedgerow, in 1960. And I'm like, I'm just so jealous that these people have these, and I don't have that much time. Even if I buy the biggest tree that I can, you'd have to live here. That's what's so tough about landscaping. It's like you have you're investing in it, but it's almost as if you don't get to enjoy that for how long down the road, where it's like, okay, these are finally the size that they're meant to be. Um, it's tough. It's almost like, yeah, I want to make this happen, but no amount of money can do that.
It's funny you say that. On the Horizon job we did, the landscape gardener specified everything that would be local because of the elements there are so severe I can't even explain, because it's literally bass straight. But she said everything's got to be planted small, really small, because the problem is if we bring them in any larger, they're just going to stay in shock because of the elements. It gets salt drip, like salt just gets hammered at it. We said, all right, well, most of it's going to be small, but we need to put some bigger stuff in for a bit of privacy. She said, we can try, but it's probably not going to last. And she was exactly right. Like they were expensive, like $700 trees each. We probably put about 30 of them along this fence line, and every single one of them just died, just went straight into shock. And we thought they were coming back, and they just die again. And she said, no, you've just got to plant small, and then they will be established in the environment that they're going to be living in and survive. And everything now is flourishing that was planted, even as tube stock. Some of the stuff now is, a foot or two, and you can just tell that it's there for forever, not just, short term.
Could you imagine learning that lesson the first time, the like really hard way, if you didn't have that lady on board and it's somebody who's not familiar with the area, and you do this massive landscaping plan and bring in all of these old mature trees and spend how much money, and then they just all die? I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, it's purely mainly from the salt just getting driven by the southwesterly wind. She said it's just gonna pepper it, and it literally did. It was just like sandblasting trees. So yeah, she was spot on there.
Looking at the last 2 years and dealing with COVID and adapting and seemingly moving back into more custom because of development costs and land costs. What what's your thought on that? Do you see yourself remaining back in the custom world? Do you enjoy it again, or do you have a longer term vision of being back in development?
Well, we're not going back into custom yet. We've got a couple of blocks of land that we own that we bought, in the middle of COVID. So they're not too bad. They've gone up. So we'll be fine there. It's probably, looking at a year or two's time. So where there might be a bit of custom work just to fill in a bit of time, just to watch the market, see what happens. It might not stay at this high, might drop back down a bit. And also we're going to diversify and look at other areas in Australia, not just focusing on the one niche area, and have a look at other areas which are, still luxury up near, the Sunshine Coast area, which is in Queensland. Just to see, right next to perfect, there's still towns like a place called Noosa where it's like the Sorrento, and just see there if there's a market there for our product, because it's a bit behind. There isn't that, new development yet.
And you said your dad's not involved with the business really anymore?
No, he is. He's involved day to day. So he's on site every day. He's just doesn't like the business, the back behind the scenes part as much as he used to.
So he's like running more like a super or project manager?
Yeah, and he's just checking, the quality's there, making sure it's built the way he wants it to be built, because he's been doing it longer than all of us. So, just quality control.
And is that kind of what he always enjoyed the most doing, and is able to get back into that now? Or was that just what he's always done?
No, he loves using his hands. He was he actually got an award in Victoria for Apprentice of the Year, best apprentice in his year, for the entire state. So he loves working with his hands. There's no doubt about that. So he enjoys that a lot more than sitting behind a laptop, plugging away at numbers and balance sheets and all the other joy we do.
Yeah, I wonder how many older, men and women who have done this, where it seems to be, you strap on the tool belt, and then you get to a point where you have to take off the tool belt. And it seems a lot of times that taking off the tool belt is almost a necessary evil, and it's not truly what a lot of people want to be doing. I'd be curious to see how many people kind of work to get back to a point where then they can get back out in the field.
Yeah, I think they're sort of forced into getting off the tool belt because their business grows, or they're spending too much time on the phone. I remember even when I was still on the tools, but then I was spending every second minute on the phone. And I thought, this is just counterproductive now. I might as well spend all the time on the paperwork, and do all the things that I'm not doing, instead of every 5 minutes having a phone call that I get disrupted in what I do, or I have a carpenter working with you where they'd have to stand around doing nothing, or try and explain something while you're on the phone for 20 minutes to an engineer trying to explain how to get a pearl on somewhere.
Yeah, and then you just have somebody sitting there watching you, and then it takes you another 5-10 minutes to get back into what you were doing, and then you're frustrated because the person sat there and watched you the whole time.
I had this conversation the other day, and I feel like it's the unfortunate pressure to grow. And like you said, like Luke, you just said, like, oftentimes a business grows, but even as an employee, like as a carpenter, they feel this pressure that in order for them to continue to grow in their career, and oftentimes I think it's financially driven, is that I need to be a site super, and then I need to be a PM, and then I need to be a senior PM, and like continue to grow up the ladder, where the reality is they would prefer, if money aside, they would prefer to be a carpenter. They prefer to be on site and enjoying putting together work. And that is something that for me, it's a struggle, because I look at carpenters, and there was a point in time where I didn't want anything to do with the business. I wanted to be a carpenter, and that has obviously changed drastically. But I don't want my team and my guys to jump into a superintendent role if they truly don't want to be there, and it's strictly money driven. And it's like, I'd rather figure out how to offset the money for you, and be like, all right, if you're a wildly more productive carpenter, then let's pay you accordingly. There shouldn't have to be a ceiling based on the fact that your quote unquote job title is a carpenter. It should be based on the performance that you put out. But also, I think we had this conversation with Kevin Craddock on the podcast, is that sometimes we take really, really great carpenters and then put them into a superintendent or project management role, and they're not great at that. And it's like, why did we take them from a position they were really good at and put them in another position that they know nothing about? And it's like, you've completely restarted their entire learning process, rather than take what they're really good at and then compound on that. And it's this, I don't want to say unnecessary, but it is this pressure, I think, society again, like, puts on us, is that, I need to continue to increase my salary. I need to continue to make more money. And a conversation we had a couple podcasts ago is like, well, maybe being a carpenter or being in this industry isn't your only source of income. Maybe there's other opportunities for you to offset your income so you can genuinely enjoy what you do on a day-to-day basis, rather than grow up, climb this ladder of quote unquote success in order for you to make a particular salary to be accepted by society.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think it's the analogy of like the grass is greener on the other side, because a carpenter sees a project manager, they might go down for a coffee, they might be sitting in a meeting. It feels like that's, it's a next role and it's a financial, 50% increase maybe. And they go, oh, let's do that. But they don't realize that at 3:30 when they go home to their family, as a carpenter, they're switched off pretty much, 95% off. Where as a project manager, you might be sitting in front of a laptop till 8 o'clock at night. You might be getting a phone call on a Saturday about someone not being able to come in on a Monday. But I think as a carpenter, you don't see those aspects. You only see the better side of project management, of they're not on the tools. It must be much easier on their body, but on their mind and their lifestyle, it really impacts it, and they get paid, a lot more as well.
Yeah, I think that, like Nick, you said, obviously your pay should come down to performance. I also think it should come down to responsibility, where if you have a job, if your job type allows you to go home and shut it off and there's nothing, you know, uh, for lack of a better term, extracurricular that you're doing after hours, I think that, yeah, there's going to be a cap there. If you have the job type where it demands more hours out of you after work hours, or kind of that mental anguish of having that responsibility and that accountability, I think that you should be compensated for that, because that a lot of people don't. And I mean, I guess that's life in general, right? You see what everyone else is doing and it looks so good and everything looks great, and you don't understand the full capacity of what that job entails. But I do think, that your pay rate and your title and all of that should be based on not just performance, but how much responsibility, what's on your plate, can you shut it off at night? And there's people that don't want to do that.
Luke, you said something a couple minutes ago that your dad won Best Apprentice in Victoria. You know, my city, never mind my state, has anything like that.
Oh, really?
There's a magazine that might say, "Hey, he's the best builder in Boston," but it's like, based on the fact that I paid a subscription to that particular magazine and paid $1,000 to be considered, and sure, like, we won by a vote with someone, but who knows? But can you elaborate on, like, what being a tradesperson in Australia is like? And seemingly, like, just what you just said about having an award, like, it seems to be well respected. Is that
Yeah.
fair to
So
say?
yeah. So there's two like organisations. There's the HIA, which is a housing industries association, and then there's the master builders. So they're two groups of organisations which all builders, you join one or the other pretty much, and you are a member of those. And then they have, if you need questions done, you need contracts, they have a whole department of, if I need a contract for a kitchen for $65,000, I ring up my HIA member and say, I need this contract. Or they've got a legal department I can ring up. And then they also have, each state, they have awards. So they might have the best kitchen award, the best custom home, $1 to $2 million, the best custom home over $5 million, the best, small business startup, the best young builder, the best apprentice for each year. All these, and everyone joins them.
Let me
to
pause
get.
you for a second. Are those like, are you required to be in one of those organizations?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, you are, but you need to. That's not what gives you your builder's license. It's the VBA in Victoria, which
Understood.
gives you your builder's license. But everyone is joined under one of those two banners. Yes, because you go to get your insurance through them.
Exactly, and this is what we're missing here, where we have the National Association of Home Builders, the NAHB. We have, I'm not going to sit here and list what we have, but there's other organizations, in the US and local to me that yes, I can choose to be a part of. The Passive House Institute, like I can choose to be part of that, but none of them are put together where it's like it's a formality of like, hey, if you're going to be a builder in the United States, you need to be part of this. And for
I,
our
I,
like to get our license, it's state by state. In some states you pay a fee, some states you don't have a license. But the resources that you just said, like, oh, I need a contract for a kitchen, or I need to get my insurance, like that that right now, there's no central hub for that. And everyone is starting from scratch every single time. Every contractor is asking the same exact question over and over. And if we had, a more formalized or like a required association to be part of, it would it just removes the redundancy. And frankly, it removes the a lot of the issues that at least I see in companies failing.
yeah, and they've also got a legal department. They've got seminars every month or two of the list of changes. They email you when a pool fence regulation might change, or did you know that this when we had these energy reports come in a couple of years ago that you had to start abiding by. And they were front foot of it a year before it happened. If you don't know, come to this seminar. Here's an email pamphlet on what you need to know about it, what's going to change in the industry. Here's what codes are changing. As long as you're reading it all, they pretty much give you everything you need to get through.
I'd love someone to reach out to us, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we have nothing like that here. And anything that, that is seemingly close is completely voluntary. And even at that point, even like the stuff that I have volunteered to be part of, yeah, there's resources there. And it's, I get an email once a month saying, hey, we're doing this seminar on XYZ. If you're interested, join it. But if there was some sort of mandatory requirement for me to be part of these things, similar to continuing education, um, or just the opportunity to like make sure that I'm up to speed on the most recent codes, and we're talking about it as a group, and everyone's like, yep, I understand. Let's move forward from this. I, that would be so valuable.
Well, it they do it for sub trades with us, like electricians and plumbers. They have to do a certain amount of time in the classroom, if it's every year
True.
or every 2 years, to ensure that they understand the code changes, the energy requirements, but not for, as far as New Jersey, not for being a licensed home improvement contractor, which is basically just a registration. Um, it doesn't give us any validity as contractors. I even had a conversation when COVID first hit with the building inspector, and I was like, if you guys can't get inspections done because you're not allowed in houses, what are you going to do? And he said, with the sub trades, they have an actual license that we could pull from them that would, they would not be allowed to practice plumbing or electrical work if we pulled that license. And he said, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but with your home improvements contractor's license or registration, there's we could pull that and you could just start another
Right.
company. There's no, it's not like an actual license to your name and with a registration code that's basically you did this amount of years apprenticeship and training. So it for us it doesn't really give us much validity, and there should be something where it's like, hey, every year or two you have to make sure that you have this many hours in continuing ed to ensure that you understand code changes and everything else.
Yeah, so over here we've got you got to be a licensed to be a builder, which means you have to sit an interview in front of the board, and you need to be. It's a lot of knowledge to pass that. And once you've got it, though, it's a simple registration every year. But the thing is, though, that registration is against your name personally, even though you run a company. So you can't just, if you stuff up, you can't just go start another company, because you as a director are solely responsible. So it's not your business that's responsible here in domestic, it's you personally. And it's the same for plumbers and electricians, and air conditioning contractors. They all have to be registered with their own exact same license. So it is their responsibility, not their businesses. It's their personal responsibility. And electricians, plumbers, and mechanical contractors, they have to give you a certificate at the end, and they warranty the work. Even as the builder, you warranty the house, but they actually warranty their own work under their own license.
Yeah, and if a plumber or electrician screws up at that point or goes under for whatever reason, they could start a new company. But if they had, if they got in trouble from whatever authority and they pulled their license, they wouldn't be able to open another company under another name. And for builders, at least in New Jersey, builders, home improvement contractors, remodelers, whatever, it's basically, I think it's I think it's every 2 years there's like a $70 fee, and it's a registration with the Division of Consumer Affairs. But there's no recourse where if I wanted to go belly up, I could go belly up and start another company, another LLC a couple weeks later with my same name and get insurance, and it's good to go.
Yeah,
So it doesn't
we
really.
can't do that. So we're held.
I mean, that's the way it should be.
Yeah, we're held responsible. So as soon as you end up in court and something goes wrong as you as a person, depending what happens, but you can't be a director for X amount of years. You can't get your builder's registration. You have to reapply, and the builder's registration is also on a demerit point system. So you might lose X amount of demerit points for a certain thing, and once you've lost too many, that's it. Your license taken for X amount of years.
Do you feel as though it's fair out in like? Do you feel as though your competitors and who you're typically working against, it's set up in a fair way?
I don't think everything's fair. You can get a set of plans and you can build the house 5 different ways inside those walls. I think that's a main problem,
Mhm.
with people maybe taking shortcuts, or people not, just knowing the trade well enough or knowing the area well enough. Sometimes you'll get away with certain things in certain areas because the wind
Sure.
might not be as bad, or the rain might not be as bad, or, the weather might not be as severe, but building down the peninsula, which we are on a
Mhm.
coast, there's certain things you have to do here, which you can't, in inner city Melbourne, you can, like French doors where you have a pair of doors opening in. We would never do that in Flinders if there's no eave or veranda on the outside, because we know the water's coming inside no matter how well you seal those doors. If they're opening in, it's going to let the water in. And things like that, where you have a tender against someone and they say, no, we can do that, no worries, we do it all the time, but they've never really been in the elements that they're about to be in.
Yeah, I would assume, Nick, it probably just cuts out a fair amount of the riffraff, which I think that
I think we have too
I
much
think
of.
that would kind of be. Yeah, I think that would kind of be the hopes for us too. That it just at least there's accountability there because it's tied to your name. So you have to have your best interest and everyone's best interest in mind at that point. But I also think it's a barrier to entry, or it's however many strikes and you're out. And I think that it's probably not that difficult to keep in good standing. But there's a lot of people who that would kind of screen and make go away and get out of the contracting game. And if it's that easy to kind of make them fall out, I think that it wouldn't be such a bad thing to have some sort of screening like that in place.
Totally. Well, Luke, we know that you're getting your Wednesday morning started over there, and you got to hit the job sites. So we appreciate your time this morning. I do have one last question. You know, in in Australia or in your area, who are some of the other big builders that you look up to, or that you see that are doing good things in comparison to what you guys are doing?
Well, probably more in Australia than the local area, but I see the Grey Air Boys up in Queensland. I don't know if you watch their Instagram, but they're probably the number
I
one.
I have talked to him.
Yeah,
I have talked to him through Instagram, and he promises me he'll do the podcast. He's just
yeah.
so busy, but I was hoping that you would say them because they are building quite the empire.
Yeah, and they're the only ones I really see in Queensland doing the sort of detail and design we do in Melbourne. Like Melbourne is very far ahead in interior design, further ahead than Sydney and Queensland. It's in nearly another league, and they're probably
Mm,
those boys are doing exactly pretty much what we do here up in Queensland, and I think that's why they're being so successful. Is they're creating this fantastic looking product that's not up there. Up there is quite simple and traditional, a bit like probably like America. And
mhm.
then there's the Neil Hipwell in Future Flip in New South Wales. So
Mhm.
he's doing some great stuff there. Really nice developments. He's just built his beautiful house he's just built. Who else in the area? That's probably the two main guys I probably look at.
Nice. I follow both of them, so I'm glad. Glad to hear that. Well, Luke, like I said, we sincerely appreciate you doing this a second go around, and I'm glad the conversation was almost completely different than the first one. So
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was more about COVID last time too. So we didn't even get into that topic. So it's nice not to hear the
yeah,
word.
screw COVID. Let's just ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, take care, man. Appreciate
All
it.
right.
Get to work. We'll chat soon.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Appreciate it. Morning time.
He's like, yeah, he's like, it's afternoon. I'm like, what's it over there? He's like, it's morning. I forget how early it is over there. Thankfully
Yeah.
it's like 7:30 at this point. So, I don't, dude, it's just so weird how much good architecture is down there. And
I thought you were gonna say how it's so weird how it's a different time on the other side of the world.
I mean, that is weird.
So crazy that it's like, do you think Santa comes to them early?
Totally, man.
Are they like a
That's
day
how he
ahead?
makes it around the whole world.
Are they a day? Is there a day
They're a day
ahead?
ahead.
So it's tomorrow
It's
there
tomorrow, and
already?
the tomorrow looks bright, man.
It's the 16th. Yeah. It looked good.
Yeah.
I'm looking
I
forward to
mean,
it
that
now.
is weird that like if you were born if he had a baby today, right? And he
Yeah.
flew to New York City the same day he had a baby,
Technically, you
that
wouldn't.
that baby
Yeah.
wouldn't have like tech would go back
Wouldn't
in
his
time.
birthday? Yeah.
Well, I guess
I'm -1 days old.
well, would you get I don't know. Now we're getting to
I think you'd be
everyone's like,
-1.
Is Nick and Tyler smoking weed on the podcast? What's going on here?" Um,
Yeah, their stuff is sick.
it's just so good.
Yeah, that house, it looks like it's around 20,000 square feet, which if you look at it, it's big, but it doesn't seem um it's not like an eyesore. Like I'm
Oh.
not even close to it, but it doesn't seem if I saw that, I probably wouldn't guess it was 20,000 square feet.
No, and this is like he hit the nail on the head when he said, you know, he looks at the stuff in the US and it's just these large rooms and voids of
Yeah.
space and you know, there's not these like textures and materials and you look at this house and listen, it's white. Like there's a lot of white going on, but it's white marble, white Venetian plaster,
And it's
white
And it's like it's open. A
a
lot of
lot,
it's
yeah.
open too, but it like the open spaces don't feel like these just like big, hollow, empty open spaces. Like they open to
Mm,
outside. There's ton of like curves and lines that like kind of break up the space. So even like even the larger areas are like a huge hallway is curved with all these different like light textures and stuff to kind of break up the space so it doesn't feel cold and sterile and just massive.
and
I feel like everything that we see, Nick, is just if it's
constantly, yeah.
big, it's just big.
Right. And it's like even the use of stone, like we talked about, you know, I'm looking at the island in this Horizon house, and it's like, yeah, it's probably a piece of marble that we've used before, and it's usually used in a slab formation. But then you look at this and it's like, oh wait, it's you know, read it on the backside. Oh wait, it's also curved. Oh wait, look at the detail on the edging of the stone and how it hits the floor and how it hits the waterfall. Like it's just it's taking material and being more creative with it rather than just using it in its simplest form, and that's what I appreciate so much about it.
Yeah, it's I think I've scrolled through the photos of this house
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
like 50 times.
Yeah. Because you just like, every time you
I just
stop and
like
just I mean, we're everyone's like, "We can't see this," but, like, there's a picture standing up on the 2nd floor looking out the entry, well, what I assume is the entry, but it's just like it looks like a photograph of an ocean. And it's just, you know, and then you look up and it's like you got a negative reveal around the ceiling and the wall, and it's just you don't realize that you're
yeah, that's what I was
like you don't even realize that you're staring at a glass railing that's blocking you from falling. Like it's just so well thought out and well done.
That's what I was looking at, like the kitchen island, and even it's like the left from the back side of it, the left side and the right side are two different shapes and
Mhm.
kind of layouts, but it's like it doesn't feel off balance. It creates a bunch of visual interest, and then like the way that the ceiling detail ties into the cabinetry with like a 6-inch it's just crazy how many different
Mm.
details are kind of pulled together
We gotta
um,
step it up.
with
Gotta
everything.
step it up.
I know, dude. Just think about how much time just like
4 2.5
planning
years.
and sorting all of it. I know, but I mean just like
Oh,
mental
yeah,
headspace
totally.
it would take, to sort all of this
But
out where it's like
this is what
trying to keep
I
everything
love.
moving.
It's well, yeah. I mean, but, that's what, that's why I'm so eager to be in pre-construction with good architects because I wanna work through this stuff, and I want it to be epic. We have, like, some
Yeah.
great projects going on and one coming up that, I think that I'm confident that we can approach it in a similar way, especially with some of the architects that we're working with, and it's just, that's ultimately what, dude, I'm like, "Look at the fireplace."
I
And
know.
then
I just keep
you
scrolling through
look at the
them.
plaster and all it's like, "Oh, wait a second, that thing's bellied out to create this, like, subtle wave at the ceiling." Guys, go check it out, williams-group.com.au. Um, Again, big shout out and thanks to Luke for being on a second time. He lost his audio the first time.
Yeah, I would have told us to take a hike.
Yeah, I had waited a while to ask him, and I reached out, and he's like, "Yeah, man, anytime." I'm like, "All right, here's the link." He goes, "Cool, I booked it for a couple weeks from now." I'm like, "You're the man." So,
Yeah.
well, next week we have Ryan Sweener of Sweener Builders. So we have Jeff Sweener, who, if you guys remember, he's in part with This Old House, but now we have his son, who is literally running, I think, the framing crew with that company. And the thing I'm most interested about talking about is that through DM, I was chatting with him and he was like, dude, I was like, you must have a great crew. He's like, I think they're under 25 or I know they're under 30. I think they're under 25 years old. And a lot of them are really new. And Ryan's young himself. I know he's younger than me. And he's running these kids and they're framing some pretty complicated projects and doing it at a really high level of execution. And as you know, the framers that we've had on this podcast already are all judging each other pretty hard. So I think Ryan gets some pretty good respect in the framing community.
Yeah, and I know we had a mix up. We were supposed to have him on last week, Builders Show,
Yeah.
everyone getting out of town, too many balls in the air. So we did kind of flip flop things and then put him in next week's place. So I know we had mentioned that I guess it was maybe 2 weeks ago
Mm.
that he would be on this or last week. But too many things going on. We did drop the ball on that and kind of flip flop things around. So that'll be next week.
Yes. And if you guys are paying attention on Instagram, Cape Cod Lumber is going to be putting together another product expo, which we will be at. So if you guys are interested in that, I should have had that up and handy while I was talking about it, and I don't. But let me.
That reminds me, I have to get a flight. I don't think I'm driving that.
What?
Too
Are you
far.
going to take a
I think I
PJ?
flew in last. What the heck is a
What?
PJ?
A private jet?
Private jet? I don't know. That sounds like it's like a rap term. Is that what they call them?
I don't know. Someone said it the other
PJ?
day, and I was like, I'm going to say
I
that for
think
now. Yeah.
pajamas. Like
April
pajamas?
14th, and it's in Randolph. So back in 2019, we actually did it. So we're gonna do it again. April 14th. And man,
So make sure you get your taxes done and then come out,
yeah, that's
you
that's
know?
that's just a few days before the Boston Marathon, which I
Oh,
got a
great.
bid,
You're gonna be
and I got
fit.
another bib. So we're going for it. At least it's not after. That would have sucked. Like, hey guys, sorry,
Yeah.
I can't walk
Like
around.
the next
Yeah.
day.
But guys, if you do want to check it out, head over to capecodlumber.com/build-on-expo-2022 and hit the register now. You can register, and I believe you can even get a t-shirt if you register. So you fill all that out, and we will see you on April 14th in Randolph.
Yeah, they'll have everything on their website, Instagram, all that stuff. You can poke around and figure out where the sign up is if you can't remember Nick's specific website.
I said it pretty good, I think. Hyphen dash.
You
It should
did,
be
but I feel
dash or
like
hyphen.
anyone who's listening to this,
Like, what,
like
how
if
many
I was
hyphens
listening to
was
this
that?
podcast, I'd just be like, all right, I'm going to Cape Cod Lumber.
Yeah,
and
CapeCodLumber.com.
finding a
There'll
link
be
from there.
CCL Build On Expo 2022. Guys, appreciate you listening. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Duration Molding and Millwork. If you're interested in learning more about Duration Molding and Millwork, head over to durationmillwork.com. I was able to catch up with them at the IBS International Builders Show. And Westlake Royal Building Products, who we've actually had on previously under the Royal Building Products name, has acquired the True Exterior brand, which means that Duration is now part of that group. Westlake does not own Duration. I want to make sure I clarify that, but they own the True Exterior brand. So Duration is now partnered with Westlake. But I was able to catch up with those guys, which is great. They're getting into a bigger family, which only can mean that they're going to have more and more support to turn around some great product.
Yeah, my brother works for Royal. So it's interesting to see it's like all coming together. He actually just I don't know what
Tyler
happened.
owns True Exterior.
Basically, in short,
Yeah,
I'm related to Keith. Keith's like my stepfather.
Keith is definitely going to leave us a review. I am not related to Tyler, guys. I am not related.
Yeah, my brother was at the show, and I was like, "Did you see Nick stop by your booth?" And he's like, "No, I didn't see him."
I was in his booth for like an hour.
I guess they must have like morning and afternoon shifts, and he must have been on like a different shift. But he just gave me a Carhartt vest with like, I don't know what happened. Maybe they had a bunch of stuff printed with the old Royal logo on it, and I just got like a brand new. And it's that down material like you were talking about in your Lululemon jacket. I take it all back, man. It's a very warm vest.
Dude,
it's so like, I hate wearing coats, and I'm like, I think I have to get a coat like this. It's so light,
dude.
But it's warm.
No joke.
Yeah, I feel like I'll rip it. That's the only issue.
Oh yeah, I got a rip in my hood like day one, but it's still warm.
Yeah,
especially once you start moving around, forget it.
Yeah, I always rip stuff when I do yoga.
Yeah. Primarily my crotch and my pants. Guys, we'll see you next week.